I will.
Yes,
This universe,
Yeah.
because it exists, there has to be an existence that exists always.
Non-contingent, necessary.
Can you clarify that?
I will clarify. The options are something exists, and because of that, something has to always exist, because that makes sense, because nothingness can give rise to something. Or what doesn't make sense is there was absolute nothingness at some point in any universe, our universe or any universe. The fact that we accept nothingness cannot give rise to something and something exists, it follows then logically, reasonably, intellectually, rationally that something has to always exist. I didn't identify what that something is. I'm at least saying something has to exist by necessity, necessary existence.
Necessary existence.
Yes.
You're saying that there has to be necessary existence.
If you disagree, tell me why, so that we can clarify and we can, cross the T's and dot the I's.
I'm curious where you have this rule that everything needs a cause, or everything there has to be.
I'm not talking about cause and not. I'm saying the existence of something.
The existence. Okay, everything. When
Do you accept that? Do you accept?
What would you actually mean in practice by existence?
Okay. You and I, we exist.
Yes.
We are something.
We occupy a
Right.
physical reality.
Is this something limited to only 13.8 billion years? Or is it always in existence?
What do you mean by existence? A physical,
is it contingent?
a physical
Is
form.
Let me tell you. When there is nothing
Yes.
and there is something, there is this difference, demarcation. Something that possesses maybe space, time, fluctuation, quanta. There's something now is different to what nothing is. That's what we are. We are in the space-time reality. We may be composed of materials or energy that fluctuates and give rise to the matter. That's what something is. I am asking you to make that conclusion by knowledge that something has to always exist by necessity. I know it's very difficult because you know what it entails. The consequences are far-reaching, but you have to make that decision so that we can move forward. Because nothingness cannot make something, and we are something here already, I'm making that point. It follows necessarily there has to be always something in existence. I didn't identify that as a cause or an effect, but I'm saying there has to be an existent reality that is always in existence.
Like the universe.
Whatever, universe or the flying green spaghetti monsters,
Yes.
whatever. There has to be necessarily an existence that exists always.
There has to be a
necessary
existence.
existence.
And you would say that
No,
the universe.
we're not identifying what that is. We're simply accepting that there has to be.
But why? Why does that
Why?
have to be? I know you're giving these reasons, but they are from
Is it unreasonable?
observations.
Is it unreasonable?
When you say
What's your other
existence,
alternative?
my alternative is that the universe simply is, and
Always?
we can't understand.
Is it always?
We only can use science to get to the truth.
No, we're not.
No,
We've dealt with that already. We
using-
don't need
not
science.
Using
Perry,
word
you're
games and talking
backtracking
about
now.
Did
necessary.
you just say the universe was always there?
Do you consider the universe always been there? That's my other potential.
I do know. I can't
but
say.
Look. The options are the universe has always been there, or something that transformed this universe into existence has always been there. You can have.
Okay, I would say, yeah, I'll say the universe has always been there.
Good.
I can say
So
that.
now we accept another level of agreement, foundational agreement between us.
Independent.
So there is this universe or something that has to be always there. You're saying that's the universe.
I'm saying the universe is independent, so it doesn't need a cause. That's
I am saying it has to always be there.
So, yeah,
Why is it so difficult to accept that assertion?
I just want to clarify that I'm saying the universe is independent. It doesn't necessarily need a cause.
Okay, so the
That's
universe
my
is
position.
independent.
Yes.
Based on what?
Well, what would the alternative be?
Now you tell me, based on if you
no,
make
what
an
would the
assertion,
alternative be?
what are your reasonings to say the universe is independent, self-sufficient, that it exists by
because
necessity?
The alternative is the existence of God, and that does not honour Occam's
but is
razor.
it clear? Can you
That doesn't
substantiate the
go
claim?
for
Look.
Occam's razor. But once either the universe has a
You need
cause
to
or it
substantiate
doesn't.
the claim.
If it doesn't have a cause,
If you make an
it simply
assertion,
came into being.
if you make an assertion,
Yes.
you should give positive claim for that assertion. The universe is independent because of X, Y, and Z. Go on, tell me. I'm willing to listen.
Well, either if it isn't independent, it would need a creator, and that creativity is God. Although God is, it doesn't fit into Occam's razor, because when you're explaining something, you should go for the explanation with the least assumptions. And God in his assumption to explain the creation of the universe, existence of the universe. That is what God is. When humans try to
talking
understand,
about God. Forget
they're
talking about the alternatives. Your alternative, your option is not the
You need to
alternative.
substantiate your claim.
Your position.
My
It's
claim.
independent.
Yes, it's
So
independent.
on what
That's my
basis do you
claim.
say that?
Based on what?
Because there's no alternative. That's
No,
why.
that's not how science
What
works.
is the best
You see-
explanation?
you see, look.
What's your explanation?
What all you're doing is you're trying to shift the burden on someone else. You make the claim the universe is independent.
Onus is
You
on-
should be able to demonstrate, not only tell us, demonstrate, and then we'll be convinced of that demonstration by reason and intellect and rationality.
What is the alternative?
The alternative is on me to demonstrate. You make an assertion that it's independent, you demonstrate to us, and we will do the critique.
Okay, well,
Go ahead.
if the universe is not independent, it would have to be dependent. What would it be dependent on? It would have to be dependent on a necessary being. The necessary being, we have absolutely no way of verifying existence. And why? Why would the necessary being not have a cause in itself? Why? Because in order for there to be a being that was eternal, it would have to come. If a being was eternal,
You're contradicting yourself.
I mean, I know.
You realize that?
I'm sorry. It's just.
You're saying it's impossible for a necessary being to exist, and then you're saying the universe is the necessary being.
I would say, why can't
You
the
realize
universe
that?
simply be the universe is eternal?
Because the scientific
There is
consensus says it's 13.8 billion
If something
years.
cannot come
It's
from
fine.
nothing, then where would God come from?
So
That
now
would-
you
that would be
reject
my
your scientific
question.
methodology and whole of science you throw under
No,
the
I'm
bus
saying if-
because science is saying, using the scientific methodology, the universe is how old?
13.8 billion years.
Not eternal. 13.78
But
billion years old.
we don't know what came
Or 7 or
before,
8,
so
yeah?
there could have been another form of the universe.
Good. Getting somewhere. So there could be other transformation of our universe.
Yes.
Good. So when you have transformation happening, is this happening by a conscious agency who has a will, knows what's transforming, or it just happens by accident? Does the universe inherently possess the characteristics of will, consciousness?
Whether the universe was
How does it transform things?
It doesn't have consciousness. No, the universe.
So if it doesn't have consciousness and yet it transforms things into one state to another.
Why can't it just be in a state of flux anyway?
And I want to know, you believe in an entity called the universe, which transforms, which makes organisms like yourself and ourselves, human beings, with intricate design and complexity and harmony and precision engineering. And yet, that thing is not conscious. So if I give you a non-conscious entity, like a piece of paper, can this piece of paper make a human being?
No,
It cannot design a human being.
no, it can't.
Because it doesn't have the ability to do so. To have the ability to means it needs to be aware that it needs to plan and design and do all of these things.
Well, not a piece
So the universe is not a conscious entity. So how does it go about do things and transform things?
Well, it's a state of chaos, and from that chaos comes order, it would seem.
No, there is no chaos and order. The universe demonstrates that there is order and precision. That's why we have the universal constants. So in our universe in particular, we can't talk about other universes because we haven't proven them yet scientifically about their characteristics, if they indeed exist or not. As a Muslim, we don't have a problem of other universes. In fact, God tells us He's the Lord of all universes, all that exist, many worlds. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Not one world, many worlds. So you have now something that Islam tells us, the existence of many worlds. So, this world that we live in, we know that this world has many transformations, and yet there are physical constants. I'm sure you have heard about those physical constants, so precise that if you change a little bit here and there, instead of 22 decimal places, 1 decimal place change, it will not function the way it is. That's how precise they are. This precision, you're saying, it just happened. I am saying, it doesn't make sense because we now have to make a best explanation. The best explanation of transformation, let me give you an example. If we have no conscious agency, and we have all the materials in flux. Just imagine now I have the tea bags spread on the floor, right? You get a tea bag, open, rip it up, and spread on the floor.
Right.
You get milk from the bottle, and you just spill it on the floor. You have the fridge, but it's not in the fridge. You have the match to make the fire, you have the cooker, you have the water to the tap, and you make the tap so tight that it doesn't open, right? Okay. You need water, milk, sugar, and tea, and the cup or the mug to make tea, right? You sit there without a conscious agent being present, because there is no consciousness. There is no willing agents. Now, with this material that you have in your disposition, would a cup of tea with 2 sugars ever be made?
If there's no one there to make it, then no.
So if there is no conscious agency, that transformation will never happen.
Well, yeah, not under those conditions, but it's a completely false.
Why is that a false analogy?
It's a false
The universe,
because the universe can't be reduced to a cup of tea.
the universe has done much more precise, engineered transformation than a cup of tea, and yet you're saying it just can happen.
It's a false analogy, because under those conditions, obviously a cup of tea can't be made. That's quite obvious.
What
to us.
conditions does the universe have that it makes all these beautiful, complex, organized entities which function in our universe in this governed way? What conditions was there in the universe? In our early universes, it was supposed to be chaos. In our early form of our universe, chaos. And yet you're saying within this chaos, somehow, without a conscious agency, now you're telling me to think, right? Somehow, without a conscious entity, they gathered all of this together into due proportion. Quran says God is the one, just to give you a comparison, God is the one who brings everything in due proportion. He proportionate things. He is the one, he makes fasawaha. He fashions them, molds them into due proportion. Like in the genetic makeup that you are. Otherwise, you might be an elephant rather than a human being. But because of your genetic makeup is such design, you only become a human being from the cells as they grow and divide and dry in the womb of your mother. So the universe, are using at one stage, it wasn't conscious, with no will, no consciousness, no self-awareness, and yet it made all of that. And we are supposed to accept that by blind faith. It makes no sense. What is the best explanation? Your explanation that it just happens is not the best of explanation, because it doesn't make any sense. What makes sense, which will be a better explanation, is there is a conscious engineer, designer, originator, gatherer, assembler that assembled and transform all of these things. That is a better explanation, and we should always go for a better explanation, not the one which is the least of the explanations make sense.
I'll test your explanation. I have a few things. First of all, what do you think? Because I would say the universe is composed of atoms. The universe is simply atoms, and everything else is a matter of opinion. Atoms, chemical reactions, and so forth. What would you say?
Did they decide to make those reactions as they are?
No. They random chaos. But your explanation involves this creator. What is the substance?
No, I'm saying you've got two explanations.
Because if he's interacting with this universe.
No. You don't know what I mean by God. You have a necessary existence which is either the universe or something else. Conscious or unconscious. Which is a better explanation for our reality? You're saying it's an unconscious universe is a better explanation. I don't see any reason to accept that, because it makes no sense. Everything that we see in our universe demonstrates to us that you need a conscious agency with a will who can transform all of these things. Even a cup of tea would not happen ever for millions and zillions and quadrillions and Googleplex years, because of what's needed to make that transformation. So better explanation is personal agency, which is self-aware, self-conscious. That is what we called a rational explanation, a rational position to take. Your position is irrational. Magic, it just happens. Chaos, it makes no sense. We have a better explanation from what we observe in reality. I am not bringing something from outside the reality. In reality, we don't see things just popping into all this transformation. You know what? You throw some parts in a junkyard and there you go, Boeing 707 or next generation of iPhone happening. Never happens. Chaos never generates this kind of order and precise engineered objects.
You talk about order. and chaos not being able to produce that, but why not? Because the cup of tea analogy, it's a false analogy. You're saying, you can't even make a cup of tea without the conscious agent.
I just gave you the whole universe, the way they are. Everything that is rotating and having on its orbit, the forces of nature within our physical constants, we see attractions and repulsions, all of that is so intricate and so precise. And yet you're saying, that's all chaos?
And with God, if we look at
you don't know what God is. We're not talking about God. We're talking about.
You said he's look.
So I didn't even say God.
You did.
I did not. I said a conscious agency, which is necessarily always existence, or an unconscious agency.
A conscious agent, though, who's necessarily existed, is a necessary being, is the definition of God.
No, I haven't defined God yet.
A necessary being.
No. You're jumping the gun. I've given you two options, Perry. My two options are, you have a necessary existence which is self-aware or not self-aware. And I have examined both. What is a better explanation? Self-aware or not self-aware? I just demonstrated to you from our observations of even using the scientific methodology. What makes sense, reasonably, rationally, intellectually, is a self-aware necessary existence to explain the reality. Your explanation of the necessary existence which is not self-aware is not an explanation of anything. It doesn't give us a better explanation. We should always go for a better explanation. You don't have an explanation which makes sense.
We're talking about, the physical reality.
Yeah.
Consciousness is just a byproduct of our biology.
Self-awareness.
Reality, self-awareness, exactly.
Self-awareness is not a byproduct of anything. Self-awareness is a characteristic of something that is aware of itself. You say the independent is either self-aware or it's not. Which one is it? That thing that exists necessarily.
Consciousness can't come out of
let me redefine what I mean by consciousness yet, because it's a bloated language. Self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
In your existence that exists always, the universe, is it self-aware that it exists?
What's your question? Is the universe
the universe that you are postulating that is always in existence? Good.
Not.
So how can it then explain about all the transformations that are happening when it itself is not aware? Imagine now, I don't even.
Chaos, the atoms interacting with one another. That's what it is. It's mad. You can't just claim that. You're saying that my explanation is.
So look, something that exists for.
If you're talking about there being a conscious agent, someone who's self-aware, a self-aware universe, and that would be an absurdity. The universe is aware of itself, and the universe is.
You need an explanation for this. Transformation can happen without the universe being self-aware by the theory called chaos. That's what you're postulating.
Yes.
But I'm saying, in our reality, we don't see chaos producing order, precision engineered things. The rules that are there, so precise in our universe, constants rather, you cannot explain that by chaos theories. You need something that is self-aware to make that into this precise way it is. Otherwise, everything will why isn't things falling apart in every way that chaos? Why isn't everything chaotic now?
Well, it is.
Because they're following a particular rule. That rule, is it acquired or is it inherent?
The rules of the universe are inherent in the universe.
Right. So the rules of the universe are inherent within this universe. So now you have an entity that has rules to organize things into precision. Does it make sense that you have an entity that has inherent rules of organizing things into precision engineering for a particular function it does, and yet it is devoid of knowledge and self-awareness? Does it make sense?
Do you mind repeating your question?
Okay. The universe, you claim, you postulate, is inherently possessor of these rules in which things will be organized in a precision, orderly fashion, such that a little bit here and there will be disastrous, but it does maintain that order. It controls and it governs, and it is in control of that particular system. The whole system is so controlled, right? All these rules are so precise. Does it make sense that without something knowledgeable, something self-aware being there, and yet you have all these precision rules? How do you even envisage this kind of understanding that, it's like saying, oh no, this computer by itself is just there. It just popped into existence by itself, and yet it's knowledgeable. It can beat you in chess. Makes no sense. We have to have a better explanation. The better explanation is always something that is self-aware, conscious. That's what self-awareness is, as well as possessor of will. Without will, tea would not happen. Without will, transformation would not happen.
I would say that if there is a conscious being that's created these rules, then what would have to create him? Imagine the complexity
Necessarily existent
of this being.
No, it has to necessarily exist. That's where Brother Hashim earlier on, Ustad Hashim mentioned about contingency. If we are here today and everything is dependent, our existence necessarily has to depend on something independent. Otherwise, you are back to the same question. How do dependent things exist by themselves and me here? Dependent things requires an explanation, and they can only be explained in the best possible way by saying it depends on something that is independent. It doesn't need another explanation for it. That's the best explanation. So our universe can only be, because everything is contingent, dependent on something that's not contingent. And that is the necessary existence which exists with all the attributes of perfection and no limitation. Because otherwise it will be limited to, again, how is it limited? How is it constrained? Because if we are dependent on something that necessarily exists, it cannot be constrained in any way, shape or form, because it exists by necessity. So you cannot put a limit to it in any way, shape or form. That's why that thing that necessarily exists will be totally absolute, not the opposite of absolute, absolute. So absolute existence, which will also demonstratively be something that has the will that brought about this existence. Because if you don't will, imagine there is an absolute necessary existence, and this necessary existence doesn't will anything to happen. Nothing will happen. Nothing will ever happen. So it has to come from a will, an intent. And that's why we are here. So to believe in a originator of our universe, let's call it that, because that's what Quran says, Badi'us samawati wal ard, the one who originates the universe, is something that is reasonable to assert. It's not something that's a blind faith. It is something which is the best explanation using all the available tools that human beings have been given. Scientific methodology, as well as the metaphysical tools of reason and intellect and rationality. Because science itself, as you know, is based on this assumption that the universe is rational. And based on that axiomatic truth of rationality, we try to explain this universe. So you see, axiomatically we've affirmed it has to be rational, it has to be meaningful. So we are saying we have all of these tools, and using these tools, we know for sure there is a necessary existence, and there has to be one of those absolutes, not many. If there are many of these absolutes, there will be always conflict of will. One of them says, I don't want to create, or what you created, I'm going to destroy it. Let's see if you can keep it all-powerful, absolute, and yet he's unable to keep his creation, or keep its creation. Conflict of will. Like two drivers in a car with independent steering wheel, it's not going to go either way. Conflict of will, it'll be chaos. That's why in the Quran, Allah says, لَوْ كَانَ فِيهِمَا آلِهَةٌ إِلَّا اللَّهُ لَفَسَدَتَا. Had there been more than one deities, there will be chaos, corruption and ruin. So it is only reasonable, Perry, to believe, to ascertain with certainty that there is an originator of our universe, and which is one. And once you know that there is an originator that created or originated or made this universe, next question is, why? For what reason? You can speculate all you want, but you will never arrive at the correct answer without some kind of skepticism. And that's why when the creator communicates, this originator communicates and tells us why the originator created us, only then we would know. And this is what we're saying is, the reason we are here is to express our gratitude to this creator. That's one of the essence of worship of our creator. If someone gave you a life of continuation after an accident,
yes,
gave you blood, kidneys, heart, lungs, whatever, which you almost destroy in an accident, you would be thankful to that individual. When this originator gave you all of that, and the means to sustain it, the food, the water, the oxygen and everything, our natural response should be one of gratitude. And that's the relationship that we have with our originator. So when we say God, what we mean by a being that deserves our gratitude.
Yes, a being that deserves our gratitude, that's what
Yes.
you mean by God.
Yes.
I see. Well, my response to the belief that there is an originator and there is God is that he interacts with us. So first of all, how would he interact with us? And secondly, how can we be certain that the universe needs a cause? Why can't you just accept that the universe simply is?
I accepted your argument, and I did my criticism in saying, if the universe just is, without being self-aware, without possessing of will...
Chaos, evolution. If we look at ourselves, we are the products of chaos. There's survival for the fittest.
We are not product of chaos.
If you look at the human...
There is no such thing as chaos.
We came from...
Give me an example of chaos.
Our ancestors.
Give me an example of chaos.
Well, I would say that the universe is chaotic.
It's not chaotic.
Our existence is chaotic.
Is the sun rotating in an orbit?
Of course, that's not chaos. So
what is chaos?
It will blow up eventually.
No, that's not chaos. That is not chaos, Barry. It is a rule that is following.
It's been born out of chaos.
No, it's not. No, that's an assumption. All we see is precise engineering throughout our universe. In this world, in biology, in physics, in astrophysics, everywhere, precise engineering. I don't see any chaos. When you say like, oh, fractals, they're not chaos, they're following a rule, they're following a pattern.
If you look at cancer, for example, I mean, if there was this originator, disease is an example of
it's not chaos.
And death.
It's not chaos. Let me tell you what cancer is.
Why would God put all these diseases and natural disasters? That's chaotic.
That's not chaotic. Let me tell you why this is not chaotic. There is this law of a human body, which is the genetic code. These codons that you have, guanine, you are familiar with this, or I'll just leave them, right? The triplet codon that gives rise to a particular code, then that codes for a particular protein, right? It's a program. Now, of course, if you mess up with this program by some kind of external radiation, for example, and then the machines that transcripts, and do that programming and manifestation of that. It's like a machinery, right? You have the ribosomes, you have the messenger RNA, all of that comes to the machine. It does its jobs well. But once you have something happening because of like say, some kind of radiations happening that interferes with that, then it's not going to do its job properly. That interference is going to cause some problems. So it's actually there, the system is there, but because of certain things, you can have this transcription errors, translation errors. That's what we call like mutations happening, right? Mutations, they're not happening by random. They're happening because of the equations that are already there. Something, if you have put there, radiation, of course you expect some kind of change happening with these translations. The Creator did not create us other than to be fit for purpose. He did not create us in a body that is going to be always continuously living and be there like a perfect body. There was not this plan of this Creator. This is a universe that's been created for a temporary time in which we have to fulfill a particular function. We will die and everything will perish. And that is self-evident. Everything is decaying. Yeah? Radioactive decay or otherwise, everything is decaying. Our solar system will decay eventually. So all of this is a rule placed by the originator. But then there will be another recreation of another reality in which our existence will be different. We will then live forever, either in a place of happiness or a place of torment. That is what you are thinking like, why is it like that? That will be there. We are here because we have been given an amount of free will. We are being tested on our free will, whether we are exercising it correctly and appropriate or not. Based on that, we will have the consequences. Because the originator has created this particular creation, he could have created us like robots, for example, with no chance of disobeying. They just do whatever they want to do. That's like the angels, who cannot disobey anything of the will of the Creator. They only do what the originator does. But we have been given another faculty of choice in which by using that you can become better than the angels, or you can become lower than the animals using the faculty. So that's demonstrating the originator's creative power and his majesty. Look, he can create creations with so many different kinds. Either you have total autonomy of, or in a limited sense of course, of disbelief or not disbelief, or fully like robots. This is an appreciation that we have, like when I have the appreciation that I can actually willingly disobey. And then you don't, then you are becoming someone who is being, truthful to the purpose of our creation.
Okay, well, your moral outlook is very interesting. I do find it extraordinary, the idea of an afterlife and the soul. You'd have to accept the soul exists if you believe in the afterlife. You actually believe that the soul will go either to hell or to heaven. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So
it's interesting. It is fascinating. I do think that really there's a totally different paradigm here, because I can see that you believe that we can make claims about the universe and what will happen afterwards and what came before by logic, looking at reasoning. And I'm saying that the only way we can really get to the truth, the only tool we have is a scientific method. And defining God as a necessary being is I won't go back into all of that.
Sure.
But I think perhaps it's quite difficult to find some common ground. So I might just go and get some food and things. But it was talking. And
pleasure speaking to you. So one thing I would humbly request you is to look at the Quran if you haven't done so already. The Quran grounds all of these reasonable things that we're having discussions about.
Yes.
The Quran gives us the reason. In fact, you'll be surprised.
It's the most gracious and merciful. Is that
no,
right?
you'll be surprised.
Is that the beginning of the chapter? It's the most gracious and merciful. Right. Okay. I understand.
The Quran even addresses the unbelievers. It says, look, it's something like this. أولم يرى الذين كفروا أن السماوات والأرض كانتا رتقا ففتقناهما وجعلنا من الماء كل شيء حي أفلا يؤمنون. This is the Arabic, because the Quran is in the Arabic language. It says, do not the unbelievers, the people who do not believe in God or in Islam, have they not known already that the heavens and the earth and anything that's between was joined together as one piece, was already as a singularity, one piece. And God parted it asunder, and He brought forth every living thing from water. Would they then not believe? The Quran is addressing who? Muslims? No. The Quran is addressing those who disbelieve. But what does it do at the end? Rhetorically ask, would you then not believe? Meaning in the middle of this address and rhetorical question at the end, it offers some kind of avenues of reflection. It says, do you not see the heavens and the earth? Everything was joined together as one piece. That's as far as we can understand in our many models of our universe today. And there was this separation from that singularity.
Yes.
That's what we understand now. The Quran is saying 1400 years ago, my friend Perry, that this, do you not see that? And every living thing was from water, brought from water. وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. Every living thing is brought from water. That means all life is somehow dependent or constituent of water. So a man in the desert 1440 something years ago who had hardly any water to drink is saying all life is based on water. Did he go deep down in a dead volcano or deepest of the oceans to know that this is the case? Did he actually have all these powerful telescopes or the scientific and mathematical, the equations that we have today to know the universe is, at one point, was a singularity and expanding? So this is something that the Quran, just give you one example, addresses, not say you believe, but it rekindles your intellect to say think and reflect, and then would you then not believe? The Quran is always asking you to submit and surrender to this reality, the origin of the universe, by your self-submission and surrender. Once you do that, then you elevate yourself from just thinking like a slave in the machinery of economy and our financial system or whatever, but it elevates you to thinking who you are really in the grand scheme of things in this universe. Then you realize you are somebody, and you're not going to just simply live your life and die and the worm comes and eats you. There's a meaning of life.
Yes.
Perry, you need to eat some food.
Yes.
Nice speaking to you. Perhaps we can speak again?
Yes, I
but do read the Quran.
I will actually have a look. It's an important thing, obviously, but and it's very interesting. And I thank you very much. And have a good evening.
I think you've got someone's mics on there, so let me give the plug to them. Whose mic is this? Thank you. And we meet again.
Yes.
Take care.